Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spiritual, Sexual, Shamanic Podcast. I am Simon, and today, once again, we have another brilliant guest from the ISTA field. It is Aaron Kleinerman. Now, Aaron is a coach, relationship expert, facilitator, and speaker. He is the lead male teacher for the Embodied Awakening Academy, a tantric practitioner, creator of several online courses for men, and the author of the international best-selling book, The Embodied Man. He's learned from the great teachers in the field of sexuality and transformation and holds a master's degree in spiritual psychology. Aaron went from being a licensed captain navigating ships to a sexual behavior and movement specialist navigating souls. His workshops, retreats, sessions and speeches help humans integrate body movement, psychology, sexuality, and spirituality. His open and authentic teaching style allows others to unlock the deeper reasons for their human existence. His mastery as a teacher provides the practical tools everyone needs to implement embodied, awakened intelligence in daily life. Aaron, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, great to be here, brother.
It's so good to have you. As we were just saying before, this is the fourth season of the Spiritual, Sexual, Shamanic Podcast, ISTA's podcast. And when I was looking through the episodes just recently, I saw that we actually haven't covered this thing called men's work. Right. I see it all the time on social media. There's so many great workshops and retreats it's possible to go to, it seems, that are on that involve men's work that me as a man could go to. But we haven't talked about it on the podcast yet. So that's what you're here today to do, and I'm so glad about that. Maybe you could just give us like a open the door for us a little bit and give us a bit of an introduction into what men's work actually is. Is that the right term for this thing that we want to talk about? What is men's work?
Yeah, good question. I mean, men's work can be quite comprehensive and varied in different directions. But to me, men's work, especially as it relates to this field of ISTA, is a deep field that supports men to, what I would say, get out of their head and into their heart, into their body. I think a lot of what society programs men to be is logical, understanding, reason, and kind of being more comprehensive oriented. And I think that's a beautiful aspect of being in a male body. And, I grew up in a very academic driven family, and everything was like, you get good grades and you understand things, then great. Whatever else happens doesn't really matter. And, what I noticed in my own world was that there was a bit of a disconnect between what my mind understood and what my body felt. And so my own journey with men's work was first like coming into men's circles and witnessing men sitting around in circle and talking together and sharing, sometimes more vulnerably. And I was like, wow, this is beautiful. But then I started to realize that I wanted more. I wanted to feel that not only were men sharing, but then they were also embodying and like somatically expressing some of the mystery and the uncomfortability of being in a male body. So, the field of men's work that I really work with is often men that have been on this path for a little while, and they're kind of asking, okay, what's next? What's the next step in this? Like, I get the place of understanding the universe and how things work and comprehending and mindfulness and meditation, but there's still like a disconnect here. So, I just finished teaching a men's retreat here in Nicaragua, and it's like when men come together and they can actually all together in a brotherhood get out of their head and into their body and step into more of the uncomfortability and the mystery and the sometimes messiness inside of the male body, and then to be seen and witnessed in that through other men, it's such a deep profound area of healing. And it's such a joy to hold and support containers that let men step into those places.
Yeah, wow, amazing. There's so much in there. So what do you see as some of the problems that men experience between they get on the path? You mentioned that, I love this. You're addressing this disconnect between the mind and the body, right? But maybe for people that have already started to uncover stuff like mindfulness and conscious awareness and these kinds of things. Maybe before that, though, what do you see men going through, right, before they even get on that path?
Well, what I've often noticed, what brings a man to this path is usually a woman. Not all the time, but that's often the way it goes. It's like something's falling apart in their relationship, and they've tried everything and something's not quite working. And so, either they feel it inside themselves or their partner's like, we're going to split up, or need to go do some work. So then they start Googling like men's work. What is men's work? What do I do? And then they find themselves maybe in a men's circle or some kind of event where more men are there. And so what I find gets a man to there, the biggest challenge I see for being in a male body in the world that we live in is there's a deep layer and place of loneliness that a lot of men go through. And they get to this place of like, who do I turn to? I'm the man, I'm the provider, I'm the one doing all these things, like having the weight on their shoulder and taking care of all this stuff. And, and not to be sexist in a way, but often in the stereotypical, heteronorm environment that we, can speak into, there's a big part of that for men who don't feel like they have a place to express these things inside and to be heard and to be listened to. Because in general, in the world that we grow up in, a lot of times the emotional body for a male body, isn't something that we're told at a young age, oh, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be upset. It's like, no, big boys don't cry. You're like, get your shit together. I came from a maritime military world. I know how to be a alpha man that leads man literally into battle and to hold those places. And I'm grateful for that. But what I realized is there was a huge disconnect inside of me to my emotional body. And then I started witnessing a lot of men in a similar place where they're the one doing all the holding and supporting. But then inside, there's almost this like inner torment that exists. And unfortunately, again, not something people are talking about in a lot of media. But if you look at the male suicide rate that's gone up in the last 2 or 3 years, especially during all the, COVID stuff. And it's like, no one's talking about that, but male suicide has skyrocketed because most men don't know where to turn. They don't know who to go to. They want support, but for a man to say, I don't know, and to actually ask for support requires a massive ego death and a massive part of them that has to show up vulnerable. And vulnerability in a framework, put it into an ISTA context, it can often be more associated to a feminine receptivity. So for a male body to get to a place to ask for support, he has to be willing to receive support, which is receptivity, which is more of a feminine principle that isn't highly promoted and activated as something that is advantageous for male bodies on this planet. So there needs to be a rewiring, but also a willingness. Like I say to men, the number one step into growth and evolution is, do you have a willingness to actually be there? Because most men on the planet, they don't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I went to an all boys school growing up, like definite, like conservative religious overlays there. Rarely saw a girl, like the model. Yeah, the models that I had for cultivating any kind of femininity within me were like few and far between, really, in my everyday life growing up. So I feel this kind of, I guess, this scarcity of some kind, or like it was not okay to cultivate that. Maybe we call it that feminine sensitivity or receptivity or something. And it was definitely a learning process later in life.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think one of the things that happens to men is sometimes they look into a field of spirituality or, conscious sexuality, whatever it is. And this fear was present for me. There's this fear of like, I don't want to go into that field because I don't want to become some pansy boy, feminine being. Like, I'm a fucking man. I'm a man. A man doesn't do this. And there's this like alpha machismo that actually inhibits the place that wants to grow. So to move beyond that and to get into deeper vulnerability does not mean that a man loses power. And this was such a huge growth for me. It's like when I first met a field that was inviting me into deep places of surrender, I'm like, ooh, I'm a man. Like, I can't go to these places. Are you crazy? We don't do these things. But I kept leaning in and I kept meeting aspects of my being that were growing and evolving. And actually what's happened, the more I've leaned into my, you could say, femininity or receptivity or my intuition or my creativity, then the more online and on point my masculine presence, direction, and clarity has become. So it's like I've expanded the wavelength of possibility in which energy can move and vibrate through my body. And to me, that's a gift. It's like I want to be on my deathbed and say, hey, I played with all the polarities possible so that I could show up in the deepest service of my soul.
So you would say that that if a man was to go, and this is what I think I hear you saying, that if a man was to go and really just practice what it is to be feminine for a while, they're not going to erase their masculinity, but maybe the opposite.
What I would say, and I really want to clarify this, is because sometimes I see in these spiritual communities men that turn into this feminine polarity, but then they get their balls become cut off and they actually don't know how to show up in the world with direction and clarity and precision. So it depends to me in the container to which they're moving into. If they're leaning into their feminine, but they're able to hold and vibrate the place of their masculine penetrative power, then they can be inside of both and they're not losing one because they're afraid of the other. What I see happen is sometimes man's power, masculine power, has been so chastised and pushed down and condemned and and judged and blamed and shamed in a man that they're like, I don't even know how to show up powerful because people always tell me I'm too much. So what then happens, they lean into their feminine essence and then they're, just men dancing around and prowling in the world, just like seaweed in the sea without direction and clarity. In my perspective, and again, this is my journey coming from an alpha masculine world, like I feel like I'm very on direction, on purpose, on point. And the more that I've leaned into expanding my capacity to feel, to be receptive, to be creative, and more like feminine qualities, then they've integrated inside of me in a place that I, would call inner union, and, a union inside my masculine and feminine, so that in relationship for myself, like my last partnership, 80-90% of the time, I'm in my masculine. Like I get things done. I'm taking care of all the things you could say a man is supposed to do. But it's important for me in relationship that I can be sometimes in my tenderness and my softness, and I'm not going to be judged and condemned by my partner. So I think it's important for male bodies to have that experience. And, the thing that's coming for me right now, I really want to express it. I think people listening can understand is that we're in male bodies and inside there's a feminine essence. Now, this feminine essence, what happens, and this is the importance of men's work, is that this feminine essence inside, she trusts more the masculine in a male body than the masculine in a female body. So when men come together and they can all collectively drop into their tenderness, into the places that they're often judged by the outside world, then what happens? That this feminine essence inside, she begins to grow up, she begins to mature and she becomes less of like a 11 or 12-year-old girl and more of maybe a young teenager, maybe a young adult, and being able to have healthy emotionality. But what happens a lot of times is that because men find spirituality through their partner, or their partner is saying, I want to feel you more, I want to feel you more. And then finally, that one day when the man's like, okay, this is my day, I'm going to express my emotions. And now if that female body doesn't have a capacity to witness without judgment, hold space with unconditional love and presence, then if she doesn't do that, then that feminine essence comes out as a young, tender little girl. And she wants to be loved and adored, but she might not always come out in a very clean, nurturing, beautiful energy. It might be a little bit messy. But if that female body can't see with unconditional presence and love and appreciate that feminine essence, then if that doesn't happen and that essence inside the male body gets pushed down, then what happens? She goes back into the narrow corners of the body and says, I'm never doing that again. That was crazy. And this is a reason why a lot of men put these huge barricades over their tenderness, over their softness, over their vulnerability, because to show those places in the society we're in requires courage. And it's often blamed, shamed, and pushed down if the outside can't appreciate those tender places.
Yeah. I've just had a revelation about men's work, about this idea of getting together with other male bodies, other lingam holders, cock holders, however you want to name it, getting together with other men in a group and going through this process of like accessing our little girls, maybe you want to say, inside us, the feminine essence inside us. It's like, it sounds a little bit like a safe space, inverted commas, for experimentation there, where we can go, hey, so we're all going to be doing this together. We're here in our masculine bodies. Maybe we've got similar gendered experiences in the world. And what we're going to be experimenting with here is letting our femininity that's inside us come out. And we're going to support each other to do that. So it's like it sounds like a dedicated space to be able to do what sounds like really important stuff.
Absolutely. And, like this retreat I just finished here, the initiation journey, which I'm, super blessed. About 5 years ago, Bruce Lyon, one of the, faculty and lead faculty with ISTA, brought about 50 guys together from all over the world and had this powerful journey in Prague. And at the end of it was like, I don't want to keep doing this, but if any of you guys want to take the lead, and, I pretty much have been the one since that initial gathering to do this. Like, the way in which I lead this retreat now isn't that exact framework. There's a number of certain rituals and programs that I utilize in addition to my background in spiritual psychology, and then a beautiful journey I did actually years ago as well with Rex and Janine, two other ISTA faculty, called TIK, which I don't think they hold anymore. But between those pretty much three things I brought that all together and assimilated into what feels like a really potent 7-day journey that not just tackles this feminine initiation, but also really tackles a place of like, what does it mean to be a man and to vibrate your penetrative power in a healthy way? To, again, look at polarities and to look at more of a dark masculine energy. A lot of men have never had a chance to express that energy in a healthy way, as well as be able to share that with other brothers, because that is usually like the energy they're most afraid of. So a man to actually have a more fine-tuned, dark, masculine, penetrative power that destroys anything that's not love on this planet, what that does is it creates safety for the queen inside, for the feminine inside, to feel safe enough to express. So the more that warrior, that penetrator, that presence comes online, then finally that feminine inside's like, I can be here too. And that doesn't mean she's going to take up all the space for the rest of his life. It just means that she too can have a seat at the table between animal and consciousness and day-to-day life. And I love that. I love when my feminine can come out and play. And it's not like, okay, guys, now I'm in my feminine. It's just like it becomes intertwined and moved and danced inside of day-to-day existence. But sometimes it requires a man to then go into that place of, who is she inside? What is this feminine essence? What is this all about anyways? And that's one of the safe places that men's work, integrated somatic, experiential, you could say sexual, working at all the taboos and the homophobias and the trust. When a container like that can be built for a man to dive into this, it's brilliant. And, I also just want to celebrate the other men in this field that I know are doing, different variations of this world. There's been this, group of brothers coming in with Emergent, which is a beautiful thing happening with several brothers. And then, other guys in this field kind of led through Frank and Nimai are doing this, Remember Brotherhood. And, I remember recently having a conversation, with Frank, who's a dear brother, and we're both just like, this work can't flourish enough. It's not even about competition. It's like, when I see my brothers out there doing it, I'm like, I have such appreciation. I'm like, I know that the way in which they vibrate, speak, and teach and share is only going to support those beings that are meant to be there with them. The ones that are meant to be here with me in this men's work, they come. And it's like, I want to empower more and more men to step up to not only just receive it for themselves, but also to be teachers and facilitators and expand this body of work into the world. And that's really what I'm witnessing with this initiation journey. I mean, this year, it's happened in 4 countries around the year. Next year, it's looking like around 6 to 7. And it's like a growing body of faculty and teachers who are saying, hey, I want to hold the flag that's going to support men in my community to do the same. And I'm loving this place inside myself that can support, mentor, and nurture men to step into more leadership in their community. Like I feel more and more my own dharma in that way, and it excites me in every cell.
Yeah, that's amazing. Maybe you could say something about people that might look at this proliferation of men's work, or might look at just the idea of it only being allowed for male-bodied people to go, and maybe they might look at that, just this whole model of what we're talking about, and think that that's not the right direction for us as a civilization to go in. Like maybe it's too conservative or it's too traditionalist. It locks us in our gender roles. Or it reinforces the patriarchy. I can hear voices saying these kinds of things in opposition if they were to look at what you and, as you say, many other guys are putting together and making happen. What do you say? What would you say to those kinds of things?
Well, I love that you bring this in because I get these questions sometimes. And, to me, the way I look at this human experience is from the place of polarity. So we're both in male bodies, and if I break down the smallest thing inside of any body, it's a cell. And what is a cell made up of? A cell is made up of a positive charge and a negative charge that annihilate each other to a point of equanimity that creates life. Everything in our world is cells. Cells are being born, cells are dying. So a cell in of itself, in the duality of the world we live in, is made up of duality. It's made up of a yin, a yang, a good, a bad, a kind, a cruel, a masculine, a feminine. So whatever term you want to speak about it, there are, what I look at in the world, there's 2 different variations of human bodies that are born into this world. One variation comes out with a phallus that rises to a point of presence that then ejaculates into a womb to create life. The other variation of the human body is the female body, which has a yoni, which receives the seed of the phallus to create life and to birth life on this planet. So my deepest desire, longing, and what I want to support in this world is the mastery of the human experience. And mastering the human experience is mastering both the feminine and the masculine, because I know when I master the human experience, then I can actually transcend the human experience to express the wisdom inside of the soul within me. But if I attempt to transcend without mastery, and I just want to be on one side of the polarity without knowing the other, then I'm just another walking contradiction like many other people I see on this planet. So what excites me and why I feel like the importance of this is because when male-bodied individuals who have a phallus, who've grown up in this society, when they come together in this way, there's a similarity of the conditioning to which they know and understand and experience. And in that similarity, there's a place of like, I can relax here. And it's not relaxing to be like, oh, I'm a victim. I have a cock in this world. It's no, I'm empowering them in this way that they come together and then to express their own uniqueness as a vibration of their dharmic reason of why they've incarnated in this form. So I think it's brilliant when female bodies come together and do their own inner work, and when male bodies come together and do their inner work. Is that the end goal of it all? No, but I feel like it supports people to have a felt sense to be heard, seen, and experienced. And there's a lot of beings on both sides of that experience that feel like nobody understands me. I'm going through all these things. When 15, 20, 30 male bodies come into a room, into a space, and day after day for a week or more, just share their experiences, it's like, oh, maybe I'm not all that alone after all. Oh, maybe I can let go of some of the shame, some of the conditioning, some of the emotions, and empower myself to be a more profound human on this planet and not just be lost in the issues and the troubles and the trauma of the past. So this to me is the importance of it, and it comes from understanding the importance of duality as a framework for, one's personal empowerment for their unique essence, their unique soul's wisdom being expressed into the world.
Yeah. I mean, this clarifies a lot for me. I'm seeing it as, say, a men's retreat, like you've just run, being not a bunch of guys getting together and scheming on how to solidify male dominance on the planet, but instead rather to relax into their masculinity together, to let the shit drop away, to share experiences, to not be so uptight and worried and scared about how they're showing up or unseen or whatever it is, all the shit that they're holding, to let that all just sink in, to wash away, and to just relax into that body, that they've been born into in this world. Is that kind of an accurate representation?
Absolutely. And I love that you put the word relax and soften and into it. And soften and relax does not mean that all of a sudden I become less masculine. It just means there's more spaciousness to be inside our naturalness. And I'll reflect on, just today, this particular retreat, at the end of it, we come together with my friends, women's trainings that happens for 5 weeks. So there's several women that have partners who have gone through this week journey. And I'd say at least 3 or 4 of them came up to me and they're like, I don't really know what you did or what happened, but I can feel a felt difference in my man after 1 week in this space with you. I don't know what it was. I don't even need to understand what it was, but thank you. And that to me is like the feminine and female bodies feeling inside their man that, wow, there's been this bioelectric regeneration, rewiring of the cells inside this man's body. And women were saying, I just feel safer, I feel more love, and I feel more spaciousness in our connection. And that is to me, is a living, breathing example of supporting two humans to unify together into a deeper field of love, where love is at the center, and the difference is the little frictional places where men are this way, women are this way. It's like, boom, it dissolves away, because both individuals are saying, I'm going to use life as an evolutionary tool for my growth, learning, and expansion. And this relationship may have triggered me in this way, and I can take that trigger, take it into my body, recognize that I can take the projection off of my partner, realize that that partner was just trying to support me to evolve and grow, do the inner work, and then come back together with clarity, with compassion and appreciation for each other, and not try to make a man more, feminine, or make him more of a woman, and not try to make a woman more of a man, and actually just celebrate the polarity of this human existence, because sexiness happens at polarity. We get attracted to each other because of polarity. So what better for a man to be held by a field of brothers to grow and expand in who he is as a man, and then to come back to his woman and be like, hey, I'm here. I love you. I've done my work, and I'm ready for you now, honey.
I could just imagine some listeners listening to this and go, yes! Yes!
Yes!
Well, that's brilliant. What would we just say to a guy who's like has a sense of what you're saying right now? Like, he kind of knows it. And the way that he's decided to make that happen in his life is like maybe get jacked at the gym, walk around like he's in his masculinity, he's in polarity, right? Isn't he? Maybe he's kind of aggressive. He chugs beers, and he gets a bit belligerent. He goes to a football game on the weekend. And is he practicing polarity in the way that you're talking about? What would you say to a guy like that?
Well,
I may know one or two of them.
Yes, I know several myself. I would say two things to that. I love and appreciate wherever anyone is, and I've gone well beyond in this journey trying to convince someone to be anywhere other than where they are. Where I feel like I can come in is to support someone when they recognize they desire a change because something's not working. So that change has to come from within. And what I would say, to that guy, and I'll share an example that really speaks to this for me. So, several years ago, I was doing a lot of work more in kind of the Aussie, New Zealand area. And I was running a weekend workshop with a friend of mine just a couple hours north of Sydney. And we had these, the first day was all women coming together, and we're helping them kind of, be in their goddess and get, also know their own inner masculine. And it was beautiful. And on Sunday, we had a group of guys coming in that were pretty much the only reason they were coming in is because they're like, yeah, my woman said the relationship's ending unless you go to this thing and go spend some time with Aaron. He's going to sort you out. So these are all like, and Aussie world, like I love Australia, but it's a lot of like Aussie blokes, just like, super alpha in that way. Like even the thought of them having an inner feminine, they'd be like turn off. They probably have turned it off already if they're listening right now,
Yeah.
But what I witnessed was within 15 minutes of starting this, one-day workshop with them, I led them into a meditation. I wasn't like intending to want to have every man cry in the space, but I just led them into a meditation. And within 15 minutes, the entire room of men, every single one of them was in tears. And these are like alpha, straight out of the coal mines guys that were like, yep. And what it spoke to me was that all I find men in that polarity actually want is for a space that recognizes and allows for their tenderness to be there and doesn't judge them for it. Mm. And when that space could be there and they realized I wasn't going to judge them and I was just going to celebrate them, it was like a part of them softened to realize, oh my God, I can bring that energy. And to me, the context of that is their inner feminine saying, hey, oh my God, I have space here. I can express all the things that have been hidden away from me in the last 20, 30, 40 years because whatever XYZ happened and you felt like I couldn't express, meaning talking from that feminine. So that to me was an example of like, I find a lot of times when I see men like that, it's not all men. I know some strong, alpha men that have a beautiful feminine side and they're very integrated, but you can sense when it's a facade for this hurt, part inside that's actually screaming out, please see me. I'm looking for support. I want love. I want tenderness. But because that masculine energy has gotten so egoic in the way in which it's expressing itself, it often doesn't even create a time and a space to allow for that softness to be there. And, I've had huge journey with this. And when I finally, it was actually a moment I remember, with Bruce, and, I did Haydn years ago down in New Zealand, and had this beautiful like vulnerability moment with him that I experienced in him as a being that I felt inside of myself, of just like these two vulnerable beings meeting at this place and loving and appreciating, seeing the tenderness and seeing the power of that, seeing like this innate power that was vibrating from both of our cores. And it just left this impression inside of me. It left this place inside that I feel like I love supporting men with, that vulnerability and power are welcome. Of course, man being in his power, being in his space holder, creating safety is so important. But if that is just a facade for not feeling the vulnerability and the tenderness inside, then it doesn't work. And eventually things like prostate cancer, things like, all the cancers and the diseases happen in the body because there's unintegrated cells that are feeling like they can only be one side. So the key piece for me is integration. The key piece is inner union, masculine and feminine, feeling like there's a healthy, conscious conversation and communion happening from within.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people might be familiar with that concept of inner union, of us you've been talking about it a little bit, but you're coming from a place where, yes, we can be a man in a male body. Maybe we have no breasts and we have a cock and we have a larger size, and we can be in a female body with a vulva, breasts, a conventional image of what a female gendered person might look like and be. But then, so as well as these sort of material bodied representations of masculine and feminine, we're also talking about a kind of more energetic or spiritual, internal representation of masculinity and femininity, right? And this is kind of the model that you're talking about. And that we can, even if we're in a male body, we can feel, or we can pay attention to our masculine spirit or our masculine kind of energy inside us. And even though we're in a male body, we can pay attention to and feel a feminine spirit or energy within us, right? Mm-hmm. And what you've been talking about this whole time is about tuning into both of those energies and allowing them to kind of merge or dance with one another, right, inside. And when we're in that place of ease with that energetic dance or marriage, as you're talking about it, we can be more relaxed in how we're showing up in the world. We can show up in a more present way, in a fuller way. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the another key to this conversation around men's work is that what I find a lot of men reach out to me like wanting to learn how to be better lovers and how do I last longer in bed and how do I do ejaculation control and all these things. And to me, our capacity in male bodies to feel deeply and to actually know how to move and circulate energy through the body, through all of these energetic channels, you can call them nadis, that are cycling through us, the more that a male body has a healthy, mature emotional expression and knows how to feel sadness, knows how to feel happiness, knows how to feel anger, then that has a direct correlation to his capacity to be multi-orgasmic. So I say to men a lot, if you want to be multi-orgasmic, which a lot of men want to be, I want to be the multi-orgasmic man. How do I do that? You have a healthy emotional body. You feel deeply, you express completely, you don't hold back, because the thing that happens, and I see a lot of this as well, is that men they send me a message. It's like, oh, you know, I ejaculate too quickly, and you know, my doctor tells me I'm too sensitive. It's the exact opposite. If you're talking about sexuality and you're at a point of 9 to 10 and you're trying to hold it, your body's like, oh, red flag, feeling too much, way too much energy, ejaculate quickly, 2-3 seconds. Oh, phew, that was a lot. Whoa. Okay, let's go back to sleep. Like, that's generally what most men's is. It's a 2 or 3 second ejaculatory sneeze, and then you go back to the dead behind the steering wheel mentality, numb and not feeling. But if you want to expand that to 2 or 3 minutes, to 2 or 3 hours, whatever your desire is, to feel more alive, orgasmic, life force circulating through every cell, moving from your base to your crown, from your crown to your base, moving into all your fingertips, becoming fully alive, wildly free, then that means that you know how to feel your anger. You know how to feel your sadness. You're like, oh, life. I want to be fucked by life. I want to receive life. I want to let it move through all of my body. And that requires that man to have a healthy emotional body. You cannot do one without the other. And so instead of actually what the doctor might be telling you that you're too sensitive, you're so numb that you've never actually learned to feel before. So the way that changes, and I've done this for so many years. I've been coaching, especially in this world of Tantra for the last 8, but in coaching the last 15, men coming to me and I'm like, you want to not, ejaculate too quickly? Learn how to feel energy in your body, because then you send signals to your body that says, I know how to feel. I can do this. Yes, it's possible. Woo!
So we're expanding our capacity to feel. We're expanding the volume of stuff that our body can experience.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. Incredible. And this is good for everyone, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Not just us, for our partners, for the people around us when we're in this state.
Yeah, and I want to speak into, because this is present now, the female bodies that are listening to this, that want to then send this recording to their man saying, listen to this. So what's really important, because I know you're listening right now and you're going to do this, and I celebrate your intention, and I get these messages in my inbox all the time. Aaron, I want my man to do men's work. What do I do? Help me out. What's the steps? The most important thing, and this comes back into this conversation of polarity, and this was a huge lesson for me in my last relationship. So the first time we got into an argument, I was so used to the moment there was an argument, putting on my defenses. I'm like, all right, crazy, chaotic feminine's about to get wild. I need to put up my defenses, not take too many punches. Literally, in one of my last relationships, taking punches in the face. That was huge lessons and learnings for me. But instead of that happening, what I witnessed my last partner do, who I have such gratitude and appreciation for, who used to teach in the ISTA field and left to create her own academy, which I now teach for as well. Thank you, Chantel, for all the support you've offered. I witnessed her pull herself away from our dynamic, go and move her emotional body in a healthy, mature way, and then come back into conversation, not blaming, not shaming, not condemning, simply taking responsibility and asking for what she needed. Now, what happened in this moment and in many moments to follow? She, as a big sister to my feminine, was showing the feminine inside of me, this is what you do when you're upset. You don't throw things at the man. You don't break windows. You don't have a hissy fit. You take responsibility for your emotions, and then you come back into clear, conscious communication. So in that relationship, my feminine grew up a lot because I had a healthy sister who demonstrated healthy emotional maturity. And it was such a beautiful gift for me. So I say to women that want to support their man, I say, move and express your own emotions in a healthy way and don't become a victim of your emotions, rather than empower the feminine in that man's body to start to learn to grow up and know how to move emotions healthy in his own way. And that might not always be you trying to coach him to do that, because that usually doesn't work well in relationships. That usually has to come from that man realizing, I need some more support. I don't know how to do this. I need support. But I just want to speak into that because I see that's often an unhealthy dynamic I see happening in the place of relationships.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So just for clarity's sake, it's so potent what you were just sharing. This, like a potential fight was arising in your relationship with a woman.
Yep.
And rather than, so she was feeling triggered or angry or whatever it was, rather than reacting straight back at you, what she did was went off into another room, like literally in that moment, and moved her body. It's like maybe she pounded pillows on the bed or whatever it is, got that initial reactivity activation kind of out of her system, we could say, and was able to come back into the room where you were from a more kind of mature place. I think is like a more responsive rather than reactive place, and was able to play that big sister role then to your little sister, who is maybe like uncultivated or not quite there yet. Yeah,
exactly. And the key to this is that the moment of pause, and this is the evolution of emotional maturity, is because when that initial trigger comes in, that might hit some part of us that wants to put up that fight response, to fight back, to try to push down the other for, I'm upset because you've done this to me, and wants to try to demoralize or condemn that other person for having done wrongdoing to them. But when we can pause and recognize that we're in this relationship because it's an opportunity for spiritual evolution and growth, rather than being upset at the person there, taking responsibility, asking ourselves the question of, oh, what does this remind me of? It probably has very little to do with the person in front of you. It normally has to do with mom, dad, brother, sister, something from the past that literally has been unexpressed, unequilibrated, unemotionally vibrated through the body, which as a result has then created for you a situation giving you the opportunity to re-feel the thing that you hadn't had a chance to feel in the past. So rather than blaming, shaming, and condemning the partner in front of you, pulling yourself away, taking emotional responsibility, moving and vibrating. And it's not that that person who created the trigger has no responsibility, because I'm sure there's something in there that can support both of you to be more in healthy communication together. But that's really difficult to do when there's an emotional fire and storm coming at them. Most men, most male bodies are so used to like escaping to their man cave the moment that their feminine is in the chaos. It's like, okay, yep, it's my time to go away. But rather, if that emotional chaos can be moved through and vibrated in a healthy way to the best of their ability, because they have their own inner masculine that's recognizing to pull themselves away, to take responsibility, go into their inner union, and then to know that, hey, love is at the center here. We're wanting to nurture and flourish love together. So that means that we can both take responsibility for the upset that we're feeling and not try to push each other down and be victims of our own circumstance, but rather go out of the victim triangle into a place of empowerment and be the creator of something new, recognizing that that person that's in front of you, who you generally love and appreciate and adore, and then the next moment when you want to rip their head off, fair enough, you want to rip their head off energetically without touch on a pillow, annihilate them, destroy them, let that energy vibrate through your body, and then come back and ask for what you need, not ripping their head off in person. That never works.
Yeah. And some of these tools, some of these concepts, maybe like the victim, like the drama triangle that you just mentioned, that's something that comes up and is really important to the ISTA level 1 training. Mm-hmm. And this whole process that we're talking about here, about like going off into your own space and ripping that person's head off, like energetically perhaps, but maybe more importantly, just moving that impulse through your body so that your body is like vibrating clearly before going in and having that important conversation. This is something that's also like crucial to the ISTA level 1 as well, right? And I guess the retreat that you're offering also.
Yeah, and it's, it's one of the things, listen, I have my own love-hate relationship with this. I love this work in this field, and I've also had my challenges through the years, and I love that. I love that all of that is welcome here. And, one of the things that, of many that I absolutely love about this field is that it puts an individual's personal responsibility and sovereignty at the table for them to claim and own in a way that I don't see happening in other places. And also with that, it's not for everyone. There's a lot, of course, circulating around ISTA in so many different ways. And like the field that this is inviting for somebody into, it can take a while to assimilate to the level of depth that's being offered in this space. And it's taken me a while. And in, even this role in faculty and stepping into it and supporting people in this way, it's supporting a level of human responsibility that isn't a lot of how society speaks, because a lot of society, it loves to support the victim. It profits from supporting the victim. And I'm not saying that, we don't want to acknowledge the stories of the victim. Absolutely. But there's a difference between acknowledging and coddling the victim and re-empowering the victim to reclaim that which they are judging on the outside. And it comes to such a foundational teaching. Whatever you are suppressing on the inside is being expressed on the outside. The outer is a reflection of the inner. So that means that it's owning all of the things on the outside, all of the destroying and the raping and the pillaging and all the things that you're like, oh my God, how could people be doing that? Until you who's listening to this, and especially male bodies that listen to this, when you can own inside of you all of those tough, strong, dense energies. Now, it's not about going and doing and morally, saying it's okay to do the abuse and all that. That's not it. But it's owning energetically that vibration inside of you. And when you own that vibration inside of you, that creates a field of safety that lets the feminine melt into this deep, beautiful surrender that has intuition and creativity that arises well beyond what the mind could ever begin to conceive or understand.
So there's a few links here, maybe to go all the way back to the start of this little thread that we opened up. That if there are women hearing this podcast and they go, oh yeah, I want my man to listen to this. It's not just about thrusting it in his face and saying, you need to do this. But maybe to own some of the content. Like, why does this sound so good to them? Maybe that's something that they can incorporate into their own process for themselves, right? So maybe precisely for the woman who's listening to this podcast, right, and going, oh yeah, I need my man to do this. Maybe it's like, okay, what does it mean for me to go through that as well, So I'm like vibrating at this frequency. My man's going to be able to step into that like far more easily if you are doing it also. Right.
Absolutely. And it's like, if you're a woman listening, you're judging your man for not doing the men's work that he should be doing. It's like, okay, let's reflect on that inside yourself. Where is he representing the things that you haven't learned to love, honor, and appreciate inside yourself? So to do your own inner work and then be a representation of the change you want to see, rather than being a judgmental bitch. Because, and yeah, the judgmental bitch, it's a little bit shift, but like what I noticed in my own relating was that I didn't know my own judgmental bitch inside of me. So I found myself in a lot of relationships with women that were doing a lot of that for me because I was suppressing that within me. So when I got to know my own crazy, chaotic, judgmental bitch inside of me, I'm like, whoa, there's a lot happening in there. And then I could start to turn that projection and that blaming that I was doing on the feminine doesn't understand, and they're doing this, and it's all their fault. And actually realize, wow, there's a woman inside of me that's confused, that's tormented, that's doesn't know what she's doing, and turn the relationship inward and let her grow up and mature. Then I started to notice that the outer relationship that I was then creating in my life started to have a vast change and difference. And it was like, whoa, once again, outer reflection of the inner. So, it's like relationships are a profound spiritual practice that we can utilize for our growth, evolution, and expansion.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that outward representation of what's going on inside can be applied in so many areas in the relationship, but like as you're saying, like in other areas as well, particularly with this kind of victim perpetrator dynamic that we see going on. It's very easy to point our fingers at other perpetrators in the world. We see wrongdoing taking place and we go, you're bad. Whereas like what's being activated internally? What are we suppressing internally that's giving us such a strong reaction? Yeah, on the outside.
It always reminds me of the great Rumi quote, which I love, that always speaks to my soul. It's, out beyond the fields of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field, and I'll meet you there. You could call that field the transpersonal field, but it's really just a field that acknowledges both the right doing and wrongdoing and isn't attached to either, and actually celebrates them both as a field of where love exists.
Yeah, totally. I also feel it's important to say that, like, it's in that field where we can actually work shit out, where we can actually, in a mature way, work out together the direction to move in, Like, it's not in this antagonizing, wounded, he said, she said, back and forth sort of violent space. Like, once we can all find a way to move into that field of love, it's not like we just stop doing anything. We actually are able to work together and move in the best direction going forward. We can get practical there. We can actually build the kind of world that we want to have there. And sometimes that's difficult, and once we keep moving, stuff keeps coming up. It's kind of the process. But we have to do it from there rather than just slinging shit at each other.
Yeah. And that practicality, to me, and what I really long to see more on this planet, is coming from an embodied leadership, where that practicality is not just the cognitive mind looking at logic, reason, understanding, but an embodied awareness around how that merging of both, understanding meets with the world of the mystery of the body, and they can actually center themselves at the heart to express how they want to merge together, to appreciate our own unique geniuses and flavors and the ways in which we show up. And I think leadership, and if we put this in the context of taking this into the world, it's important to both have that, practicality of masculine leadership that creates structure, but it's also important to have the leadership of the feminine that leads from the unknown, that leads from the mystery, that leads from just trusting in source spirit to move through him, her in a way that guides people back into, the essence of who they really are. And, feminine leadership, I feel like, is one of the lost pieces on this planet right now that the world needs more of, and needs more of a place to, in male bodies and female bodies. And that feminine leadership isn't mean I'm just floating around in a red dress, doing whatever I want in the world. It means that I'm trusting and having such an appreciation for the intuitive arrival of knowledge, wisdom, framing that moves from a place within that can never actually be conceptualized by the understanding of the mind.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I'd love for you to say a little bit more about that, like just to come full circle as we kind of move towards the end of that time together. You've got your book. There's a couple of copies in the background for those of us watching this podcast back. It's called The Embodied Man, and you're talking about this embodied leadership. And that maybe this is one of the things, as you began our conversation talking about, this is one of the things that is maybe missing from some men's work, or the way that men identify with each other, this embodied piece. So, could you say a bit more about that? Like what does that actually mean for men? How do you work with that in your retreats, for example?
Yeah, for sure. Embodiment to me is the place where we move beyond trying to figure out what we're going to say, what's going to be expressed, and we start to drop into the wisdom that's alive in our body that sometimes has been forgotten. So, the context of the work I'm doing, and, I wrote a book on embodiment, but the book itself is like words and structures and practices and things like that, that's inviting people into a deeper mystery of the body. But what's required to go into embodiment is both fluidity, as well as structure. Our bodies are made up of bones. If the bones had no blood and water, then they'd just be a pile of bones on the floor. But if the blood and the water had no bones, then they'd just be a pool on the floor. So we actually need both in order to live and to breathe and to express our unique genius on the planet. So these places of embodiment and creating places is to move beyond trying to figure out what I'm going to say or what's going to happen next, and actually let this natural intuitive nature begin to express itself. And literally, what happens when the body has a permission field and a safe container to do that, the emotional waters of the body start to clear away the cysts, the cords of energy that have been stuck in the body for a long time. And those emotional fluidity and those waters start to flood the system back with life force. Life force, call it sexual energy, call it aliveness, call it whatever you want to do. It's life force energy. It's kundalini. It's a serpent rising at the base, going up the central channel, rising up into the crown, expressing itself into the world. It's both, Ida and Pingala, these other two Nadi channels, circling themselves through the body, remembering the gift of being in this body. There's so many masculine spiritual traditions on the planet that are denying the body. It's like, body's too much. Let me just be out of the body and be in the infinite world of the abyss that's connected to the ethers and the cosmic realities of existence. I love those places. I love playing those places, but I love being in the body, because that's where it gets messy, it gets wild, it gets joyous, it gets alive. It's like there's so much juice to be in there. And I know at some point I'm going to leave this body, and then I get to play in all those realms, and I'm going to enjoy it. But I also want to enjoy being in the earthly human domain that my soul has decided to incarnate into. So being in the body requires going out of just the mind, going into the body, not denying the mind, utilizing the mind as a gateway for understanding, and then dropping into the place where I feel like the heart is the center point, meaning that I can utilize the logic, reason, understanding of my mind, take that energy downward. I can take my energy of my base, of the deeper, darker mysteries of, of emotionality and our sexuality and our anus and all this stuff there, rise that energy up into the heart, and then open my heart into the world to say, I'm here. I'm here. I'm fully embodied as a being, and I'm not denying any aspect of me, not my masculine, not my feminine, not my cosmic reality, not my earthly reality. All of that is welcome. And that's the thing I say, in any new Tantra event I'm running, in this field of Tantra, what just means to weave, Tantra is misunderstood. That can be another whole conversation, but just means that we're embodied and we're choosing to be in this body where all of you is welcome.
Amazing. Amazing. It feels like there's obviously so much to talk about and experience. It feels like that's like a really sweet place to leave our conversation in. Is there anything left, that needs to be said for you in this opportunity that we have?
Yeah, I would just say to anyone listening, the number one thing that creates transformation and change is your own willingness to make that transformation change. It's a recognition that some aspect, some way of being, something in your life is not working anymore, and you're ready to literally shift the neural pathways of your brain to see a different reality through a new lens of perception. That lens of perception expands and increases when you have a willingness inside to expand how you're observing the reality around you. And that's the work I do, in writing and teaching and speaking and holding groups with ISTA and holding Tantra groups and holding all of these different things, supporting people to recognize their innate genius inside and to transform the lens to which they're observing reality.
Amazing. So there's a couple of things we have to do before we complete. Okay. We've got a tradition of asking a couple of quick fire questions at the end of each episode.
Beautiful.
Are you up for it?
Of course.
Yeah? Okay. So in 2 or 3 words or less, what do you love most about men?
Innate capacity to grow.
What is your favorite thing in the room with you right now?
Probably the rope that's on my bed.
Who is the one person you would love to have dinner with?
He's coming into my awareness, Donald Trump.
Are you a beach guy or a mountain guy?
I'm a Piscean beach guy. I fucking find my soul in the mountains, man.
What are you reading at the moment?
I'm reading several books on Audible, a variety of books on different trauma. On Awaken the Tiger Within, Peter Levine book. I'm always diving into the way in which I can communicate more effectively the conversation around trauma into the work that I'm doing. It's something I've been working with for 15 years, but I always really want to expand how I can have more versatile communication around trauma-informed teachings.
What's your favorite meal?
Hummus.
What's your hidden skill?
Deep listening. I don't know if that's hidden, but that's what I do really well.
And finally, if you were a piece of furniture, what would you be?
A bed, for sure.
A
well-used bed.
Yeah. And if you want the extra unspoken element of our answer, you're going to have to watch this episode on YouTube. Aaron, thanks so much for being with us today. How can people find out more about you if they want to join you on one of the retreats or trainings that you run, or get hold of your book?
Yeah, so you go to aaronkleinerman.com. I'm the only one there. Easy book. You can go to The Embodied Man on Amazon. The Embodied Man book will also take you, .com will take you to my website. And if you want to do the men's retreats, theinitiationjourney.com. We're going to be in over 6-7 countries this next year. So we'd love to see any one of the listeners and live at those events.
Amazing. Awesome. Thanks so much. And I can't wait to speak to you again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother.